Hello, everyone, and welcome to the What's It Like to Own a Zero Emissions Vehicle webinar. My name's Alyssa, and I'm the project coordinator for Bow Valley Climate Action Society's Envisioning and Preparing for Our Low Carbon Futures project. We've been collaborating with the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley and getting support from the Canmore Museum to put on this event. And so I'd like to just start off by giving a really big thank you to the funders that have made this webinar, as well as many more events to come possible. They're at the bottom of the screen here, but they are the Banff Canmore Community Foundation, the Town of Banff, the Town of Canmore, and Natural Resources Canada. Now, before we officially get started, and as folks continue to join in, I'm just going to pass it over to Andrea to chat about some about our organizations and some upcoming events that you can watch out for.
Hi everyone, my name's Andrea and I'm a program associate with the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley. We are a Canmore-based nonprofit and our mission is to empower community leadership on environmental challenges. And as part of our Shift Climate Transitions program, we are putting on more exciting events in the next couple months, including a ZEV or Zero Emission Vehicle show in Canmore on March 26th with exhibitors, presentations, and vehicles that you can come look at. And as part of this event series, we have more webinars throughout February. So if you like what you learned today, Will is joining us again on February 9th for an even deeper dive into electric vehicle ownership in Alberta. We'll have Gersh Ball from Zeno Renewables covering solar powers and electric vehicles. So if you're wondering if that's a good fit for you and your home, he will talk about how to make that decision. And our final webinar will be covering the global context of EVs in Canada and how this is impacting Alberta and what to expect in the future. So the best way to stay tuned about our events is to follow us on social media, Biosphere Institute, or visit biosphereinstitute.org/events. Pass it over to you, Alyssa.
Great. The Bow Valley Climate Action Society also has an event series called, as I mentioned, Envisioning and Preparing for Our Low Carbon Future, where over the next several months, we'll be sharing more events, videos, exhibits, and social media challenges around the topics of reducing the carbon footprint of our transportation, our buildings, and our food. So if you want to learn more about these upcoming events, you can follow us on Facebook, and you can also visit our website if you're interested in becoming a member and donating or in signing up for a monthly newsletter. And we'll put links to all of these in the chat after this. And finally, we just want to thank the Canmore Museum for the support as well. And they have an event series called the Nature Climate Community Series, which is a monthly speaker series exploring the various dimensions of how nature, climate, and community interact and how we can bolster a sustainable future in Canmore. And you can find more about these events by checking out their 2022 winter program guide, which again, I'll put in the chat after this. Now, before I pass it off to our guest speaker, I want to open up two quick polls. The first is going to appear on your screen in just 1 second here. And it's asking, where are you joining in from? So the options are maybe you're in Banff, maybe you're in Canmore, maybe you're elsewhere in the Bow Valley, maybe you're elsewhere in Alberta, elsewhere in Canada, other. So I see people are responding now, so I'll give it a couple more seconds. And as you're filling this out, I invite everyone to consider too what traditional territory you're residing on. Me personally, I'm in Canmore, calling in from Treaty 7 land, the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda peoples. And it's also been traveling grounds for many others. Give it one more second for the poll here, and then I'm going to end if you haven't quite put your answer in yet. Awesome. Well, it looks like we have lots of people joining from Canmore. Welcome, everyone. Someone from Banff, some other folks from around the Bow Valley. That's fantastic. Elsewhere in Alberta, amazing. Elsewhere in Canada, too. That's always so exciting to see where people are joining in from. Thank you. And now we have one more poll that I'm going to share with you all. And this is to get a sense of what you know about electric vehicles. So there's not much. I'm interested in finding out more. Maybe you've heard of electric vehicles, but that's about it. A bit, you're here to learn more. You've maybe done your own research, but you're excited to hear from an expert. Or maybe you know a lot. You're very passionate about electric vehicles. Maybe you own one. Maybe you have friends who own them, and you're here to see what else you can learn as well. So give that one more second. So far, it looks like lots of people have a little bit of knowledge and are here to learn more. That's fantastic. But it's great to see some folks that don't know much and are very knowledgeable as well. Always super exciting. Okay, I'll leave it open for one more second. And gonna end that, and now you should be able to see, yeah, like I said, it seems about the same. Lots of people are kind of in the middle, but you know, whether you're learning about EVs for the first time today or you're here with a wealth of knowledge, we really do welcome everyone. So with all that said, I now want to welcome our guest speaker, William York, who has served on the board of directors of the Electric Vehicle Association of Alberta. Sorry, I'm just going to close the poll here. Okay, that should be gone. Has served on the board of directors of the Electric Vehicle Association of Alberta since 2017. He has a degree in electrical engineering and has worked in the electric utility industry for nearly a decade, currently working as an electric vehicle specialist for ATCO Electric. Throughout his career, William has installed nearly half the EV fast charging infrastructure in the province of Alberta. And so William is going to give us a dive into you know, owning an electric vehicle and everything you might need to know about that. At the end, we'll have time for Q&A. So if you do have any questions that you think of now or throughout the presentation, there's a button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A, and feel free to put your questions in there at any time and we'll get to them at the end. So that's all from me. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the floor over to William York.
Great. Thanks, Alyssa. All right, quick mic check and screen check. Can you see my slides?
You're all good.
Okay. All right. So thanks, Alyssa, for that introduction. What's it like to own a zero emissions vehicle? It's great. The end. Time for questions. I'm just kidding. So yeah, like she said, the Electric Vehicle Association of Alberta is a nonprofit association that was founded on Earth Day, April 22nd of 2014. And our purpose is to accelerate electric vehicle adoption by raising awareness, educating Albertans, nurturing a community, and contributing to pro-EV policy in Alberta. Alyssa gave a great introduction to myself, so I won't bother with any more. I'll introduce my car now. So in 2018, I purchased a Tesla Model 3 long range. I named it Invictus because it's black interior and black paint, and there's a quote in that poem that that speaks to that. Black is the pit from pole to pole. It's a rear-wheel drive vehicle with a 75 kilowatt-hour battery and 525 kilometers of range per charge. It does 0 to 100 in about 5 seconds. And it comes with an 8-year battery and drivetrain warranty, 80,000 kilometer or 4-year, whichever comes first, bumper to bumper warranty. So getting into it, an electric vehicle as a daily driver is the best commuter vehicle you could ask for. It has the range that mostly everyone that does a commute, according to Statistics Canada, it's about 50 kilometers a day round trip. They're quiet, they're smooth. Your home is your gas station. They're safe, cheap, reliable, convenient, and the heat is instant and it's always warm. So this is a little heat map of my travel in Edmonton, where I live. I live in the southwest side of Edmonton, and this is about 2 years worth of data. So you can see that I heavily use the southwest side where I live. I commute to downtown, so that's why there's such bold blue lines downtown and heading to downtown. And then I visit relatives on the west end close to St. Albert. You can see that there. And I make sparing trips to the north side of the province and elsewhere. That's where you see the faint blue lines. So when we talk about range in an electric vehicle for commuting and for daily activities, I have never, ever needed, keyword, needed to use a charging station in Edmonton other than the one in my garage. Have I used charging stations in Edmonton? Absolutely. There are free charging stations all over Edmonton that I will regularly plug into because why not? But I have never, ever needed to use a charging station in Edmonton. And so one thing we commonly hear at the EVAA is people say, well, there's just not enough charging stations. And I really challenge people on that statement because a lot of people do not take their car outside of their hometown. So really, how much do you need for range? It's not much, especially when your home is your gas station. They're smooth and quiet. So this is a graph of, in the red line, this is the torque versus speed curve for a gas vehicle. And in the blue line is a torque versus speed curve for an electric vehicle. Now, what do you notice? Well, for the gas vehicle, there are all these discrete curves. And that's because a gas vehicle has gears, first gear, second gear, third gear, and so on and so forth. And that's what leads to this really non-linear, jerky feeling when you're driving a gas vehicle. It'll pause a moment to shift. Once it engages that gear, you'll get thrusted back into your seat and so on and so forth. It's not smooth. With an electric vehicle, there's only one gear set. So the torque speed curve is completely linear, and that translates to a very smooth drive. Of course, you can lurch yourself back in your seat if you really press down on the accelerator hard, but if you feather the accelerator, it's just such a smooth and comforting ride. And they are very quiet. So I plucked this graph from a electric bus manufacturer out of Winnipeg. So this is these are sound levels inside a coach bus, but it's representative of what driving a passenger electric vehicle would be like. So you can see in the dark blue, that is the sound levels in the driver's seat, front seat, middle seat, rear seat. And then this New Flyer company compared to two other manufacturers that make diesel motor coaches. And you'll see that the sound levels are actually quite a bit higher in most cases than the electric. And this is true for passenger vehicles. When I'm driving, especially when I'm doing urban driving around the city, I barely notice the sound of my vehicle. And funny little anecdote, I live in a detached house with a detached garage, and there's an alleyway, and sometimes people are walking up and down the alleyway. And I actually play a game and see if I can get really close to the people without them noticing me. And so I just creep with my car. And since there's no engine noise, I can get pretty darn close without them noticing. The only sound you really hear is the sound of the tire pressing gravel against the road. But otherwise, electric vehicles are deadly silent. And one of the most, I would say, the highest value proposition of owning an electric vehicle is that your home is your gas station. So when it's -40 out, you don't need to put on your gloves and go to a gas station and pump stinky petrol fuel into your vehicle. You just back up into your garage, walk up to the wall, grab the charging holster, pistol off of the holster, and plug it in. It takes literally 5 seconds, and it's so easy. You wake up every morning to a full tank. So I wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive, and this is something that I'm going to expand upon on the February 9th presentation about installing a charging station in your home. So on the left-hand side, this is actually an overhead view of my house here in Edmonton, and you can see that I have a detached garage. So it is a consideration when you're looking at buying an electric vehicle. Where is your electric panel located? And it's pretty easy to find that in your home. You can just Google what does an electric panel look like and compare that. It's in your mechanical room, so it should be close to your furnace and everything else, hot water tank. So map out where that is and then put that in relation to the charging station. Is it a short distance? Is it on the same side of the house like the rear, or is it on the front, closer to the front of the house? If you have an attached garage, like the image on the right-hand side, how many walls, how many ceiling panels might the electrician have to puncture through in order to get the cable from the main panel to your garage? Those are the types of considerations that you'll have to make when you're doing, the estimation of how much it'll cost to install a charging station in your garage. According to installation experts that I've talked to, the cost can vary between $1,000 and $4,000, but the average is about $2,000 all in with a supply and installation. So the high-level steps to get a level 2 charging station installed in your garage is to contact an electrician. That electrician will come and do a site visit and prepare an estimate. I do recommend that you consider seeking a second estimate to compare two installers. You might be getting price gouged on the first person that you reached out to. But if you get 2 or more quotes, you can do a better comparison and see which one is the better choice. The electrician will then pull an electric permit from the municipality with jurisdiction. So for you folks that are in the Bow Valley, I'm not too sure who is the electrical safety codes officer. They might be farming that out to a contractor, but go to your local municipal office and they'll walk you through the procedure. After that permit is pulled, the installation will take usually between 1 and 2 days. Once the electrician has completed the installation, they will reach out to the local authority and ask them to conduct an inspection. And sometimes there are 2 inspections. There's a rough inspection and then a final inspection. Sometimes the electrical inspector sees that all they need to see on the rough inspection will actually give you final approval without having a final inspection. And then energization, which is literally just flipping a breaker and your charging station is active. Note that in step 2, the electrician might find that you have insufficient electrical capacity or physical capacity in your breaker panel. And there might be alternatives, or you might have to reach out to your local utility. And that's something that I'm going to get much more into depth on in the February 9th presentation. You can see in the upper right corner of this slide that there was a pretty inflammatory article published by CTV about somebody encountering a $45,000 EV charging installation. And that is a corner case and something that was not really required. So definitely recommend attending that February 9th presentation to learn a bit more about that. Bottom left-hand corner or bottom right-hand corner of this slide, that is a Leviton charge controller, which is a device that basically circumvents the CEC. There's a calculation that's required by the electrician in the Canadian Electrical Code. And this charge controller allows you to circumvent a portion of that calculation. So basically, you can install this and it's as if your EV charging station doesn't exist. And what this device does is it monitors your main panel for the electrical consumption to exceed 80% of its maximum rating. And when that happens, it will shut off the EV charging station. It'll wait 15 minutes, check to see if the capacity has returned. And if it has, it will turn back on the charging station, or it'll just continue to wait till the capacity returns. So safety. All right, so electric vehicles are constructed with something that's called the skateboard deck design. You can see it really nicely here in this image. This is the exoskeleton of a battery electric vehicle. I believe it's a Tesla Model S. So in between the wheels, that's where the battery resides, and a lot of the drivetrain electronics. And then on the front axle and the rear axle, that's where you have the electric motors themselves. So there's no engine in the front. There's no alternator, carburetor, battery. There is the HVAC system, but it's largely empty space. So much so that car companies are starting to call this the front trunk. So there's just an enormous amount of space in there. And if anyone on the line knows anything about vehicle safety, crumple zone is a very important is a very important thing to design for. And it basically takes all the impact from the force of a collision and distributes it amongst the components in the vehicle that are foldable, bendable, malleable. They all absorb the impact of the collision rather than the occupants of the vehicle. And in fact, with the skateboard deck design and the battery being in the middle, that adds extreme structural rigidity to the in-between parts of the vehicle, which is where the people reside. So the people are residing above something with great structural rigidity, and that prevents, a foreign object such as a pole or another vehicle from entering into the cabin space. So electric vehicles are very, very safe. Here's an image of the crumple zone on the car that I drive, the Tesla Model 3. And you can kind of see the outline of the front trunk container. It's warped there, but you can look up, just Google Tesla Model 3 crash, and you can see lots of NHTSA testing that show just how good the crumple zone is on this vehicle. And this is something that's going to be true of many electric vehicles, not just Tesla. What does this translate into? Well, the NHTSA is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. They test all vehicles by all major OEMs. And since 2011, they have tested 50 vehicles and they've landed in the top 50 spots. And this is their probability of injury. And you'll see that all three vehicles that are battery electric vehicles, they happen to be manufactured by Tesla, the Model 3, S, and X, scored the top 3 lowest probability of injury scores of any vehicle tested by the NHTSA in the last 10 years. So that's pretty impressive. Okay, so electric vehicles are cheap and reliable. In Alberta, we pay roughly 10 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour all in. So that would cover your retail energy charges, that would cover your delivery charges, transmission, distribution. So all in, you pay roughly 10 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. The car that I drive is a 75 kilowatt hour battery. So that means that it costs roughly $7.50 to $15 per fill, quote unquote. So that's $7 to $15 to drive about 525 kilometers. Pretty good. On top of that, there are no oil changes. There's practically no maintenance with an electric vehicle. There's no spark plugs, there's no belts, there's no carburetor, there's no alternator, no fuel injectors. The transmission is a simple 1-gear transmission. There's very few fluids or really just anything that you need to maintain. It has about 1/10 the amount of moving parts of a gas vehicle. So the average electric vehicle is about 130 moving parts. The average gas vehicle can be 10 times as high as that. In the last 4 years of owning my vehicle, I've only had to replace windshield washer fluid and cabin filters. So pretty minimal maintenance. And I expect that in fuel cost savings alone, I will have saved about $20,000 over that 10-year period. So I do intend on owning my car for a 10-year period. I paid about $70,000 for it. So effectively, that car will cost me something around $50,000 if I apply the total cost of ownership. And that's not including maintenance savings. So they are convenient and always warm. You can preheat any electric vehicle in the garage with the garage door down while it's still connected to the grid. And the beauty of doing that is that it will pull energy to warm the vehicle off of the grid rather than its battery. It's called thermal preconditioning. And what that does is it allows your vehicle to go further. So if you're doing a really long road trip, you would thermally precondition your vehicle. And instead of, as soon as you pull out of your driveway, the cabin heat is coming from the battery, the cabin's already preheated, so it needs to add minimal heat throughout the drive. And in an electric vehicle, the heat is instant, just like using an electric hairdryer or a toaster. The heat comes like that. And it's honestly one of the best features of owning an electric vehicle in a cold, wintry climate like Alberta and Canada tend to have. So I can't overemphasize how great it is to have this in my car. And like I said, there are no exhaust fumes, so you don't need to feel guilty about just constantly polluting for a comfortable drive. You can do this with like 1/10 of the GHGs, depending on your electricity source that a gas vehicle has. So it's just incredible. And like I said before, plugging in just takes a couple of seconds. So you don't need to hang around with your hands freezing while you pump for 2 minutes at a gas station in -40. You can just plug in and walk away. Your car charges overnight while you sleep. It's beautiful. Cars are increasingly coming with these mobile apps where you can control them from the mobile app. So I can preheat my car for family members. Like if my nieces and nephews are getting into the back seat, I can warm up the rear heated seats for them. I can preheat the car while I'm finishing up some work at the office and I want to get into a hot car, or let's say it snowed a lot and I really need to melt off a lot of snow. You can start the preheating functions from your mobile app. It's really, really, really awesome having this. One other thing to mention about convenience is the time that you save by not having to stop at gas stations. So I took a stab at graphing out how much time is spent refueling between an electric vehicle and a gas vehicle. So the blue bars are the cumulative minutes spent at a gas station throughout a year with a gas vehicle. And the purple is the cumulative minutes spent at an electric vehicle fast charging station, because we're not going to count the charging that's done at home, right? That's instantaneous, we'll call it. So in January, the electric vehicle doesn't go on a road trip, so there's no time spent at a fast charger. But then they do a road trip to Calgary in February, and that adds some time. Then March comes by, April, May, June, no road trips, but the gas vehicle keeps going to that gas station, keeps having to fill up. The assumption here is that they have to do two fill-ups per month, and it takes 10 minutes to drive to a gas station, fill up the tank, and get back on their route. And then by July, there's a road trip to BC. So the EV driver is having to do a ton of fast charging, right? And so with the gas vehicle, they'd have to do fill-ups at the gas station. So we get to add some time there for them. But by the time you get to the end of the year, over the course of the year, the EV owner will save about 2.5 hours over the gas vehicle owner. And if you factor in no road trips, you'll save about 4.5 hours per year by not driving a gas vehicle anymore. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that's a great convenience feature for driving an electric vehicle, is not having to worry about that. You could add in all the time that you don't have to go to Jiffy Lube or tinker around with maintenance on your vehicle, checking the oil levels, all those sorts of things. All right, so now let's take a look at the opposite end, not being a daily driver, but road trips. So there are some disadvantages, right? The range, that 50 kilometer a day assumption is no longer there. And you no longer really have the convenience of a home gas station. So some tips for this, long range models do make it easier. Most electric vehicles on the market today come in variants. So there's usually a short range variant, a median range variant, and a long range variant. So if you find yourself being the frequent road tripper, I'll say, you may want to consider springing some money up front for a longer range model. But I will say that fast charging infrastructure is getting faster every day. Back in 2017, when I started off as a EV specialist, fast chargers were on average about 50 kilowatts. Now they're getting up to 350 kilowatts, and I think they'll continue to improve. Not only that, fast charging infrastructure is becoming more plentiful. So there's more people getting into the game. There's more funding available. It's more expensive than charging at home, but it's still cheaper than gas. But you can find free charging at hotels and other places. IKEA, for example, offers free charging. The one disadvantage is that you can't always, we take for granted the gas stations are everywhere, and you can't always assume that there will be EV charging, and especially EV fast charging wherever you go. So you do have to use some resources, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. One nice thing though is that it forces you to stop and recharge your batteries, not your car batteries, but your actual biological batteries. Take a break, walk, stretch your legs, take a breather, unwind. I think these are important things to do when you're doing a long road trip. I don't think it's healthy to drive for 8 hours straight with only a 3-minute stop in between to get gas. I don't think that's healthy for people. So if we expand out that map view that I showed earlier, you can see that I do regular trips to Jasper, Canmore, Banff, a lot in the Bow Valley area. I've actually taken my car as far as Seattle. The reason why it's not shown here is that the tracker that I was using to populate this map, the API key no longer worked with my car for like a couple days, and it just so happened that it was on this road trip, so that was unfortunate. But yeah, I've done long distance road trips in my vehicle, and I love it. I think it's still wonderful. There is a resource called plugshare.com that shows you all the charging stations that are available in the world. Actually, all these orange markers are fast chargers located in Canada, and all the green markers are level 2 charging stations. And actually, if you zoom into certain areas like Edmonton, the green markers just continue to pop up because there's so many in Edmonton. So they're doing a little bit of filtering on the zooming views here to help show the data better. But there are a lot of charging stations, way more than you'd expect. And it just continues to grow. Everywhere where you see an orange marker with a wrench inside it, that's a fast charger that is planned but not yet constructed. And like I mentioned, there's complementary charging all over the place. So this is a shot of this is the Fairmont at Jasper, and they installed a few complimentary level 2 charging stations for people that stay there overnight. On a level 2 charger overnight, no matter what, you're fine. So this is essentially a free gas tank just for driving an electric vehicle and staying at one of their establishments. In no way will you ever see free gas at a hotel. You'll never see gas stations pop up at ski resorts. You'll never see a gas station right at a restaurant or here at a hotel. This is something that you can only do with electric vehicles, and it's just becoming more popular day by day. So it's a huge advantage of owning an electric vehicle if they have it, and increasingly that's becoming the case. And like I said earlier, there is a plethora of charging infrastructure funding coming out of both the federal government and provincial entities. So top left corner, the federal government just announced $2 million to install up to 260 EV charging stations in Alberta. That is hot off the presses from this week. And in the bottom right corner, the MCCAC, which is the Municipal Climate Change Action Center, has announced $3.4 million for municipalities to build EV charging infrastructure. And that includes fast charging infrastructure. So we're about to see a lot of fast chargers get installed in Alberta, which is really great. There are other benefits as well. And I'm just going to take a little sip of water here and fix my parched throat. So no guilt. So I do find myself or found myself previously not liking to go through drive-throughs, idling my car in any type of circumstance, because it felt like such a source of local air pollution, overall climate change, GHG pollution, and just a waste of money. But with how efficient electric vehicles are, it's removed a lot of this guilt and has made me, change behaviors that, are more convenient for me. I'm now warmer when I'm idling because I'm not shutting off my car and just rubbing my hands together. I'm going through drive-throughs to, make it easier to get food or get stuff when I'm on the go. There's a lot of instances where I can point to that I just view driving differently. I also find driving more enjoyable. So I'm more likely I sell things on Kijiji from time to time, or buy things on Kijiji from time to time. And I find that I'm offering free delivery, or I'm going to go pick up items rather than asking the seller to bring them to me, because I know that this is the more sustainable choice. And it's so cheap for me to drive. You know, if I drive from my house to to St. Albert, it only costs, I think, round trip like $1. So it's just changed the way I've viewed this part of my life, and it's definitely for the better. I can point to a few circumstances where I needed to work on things in my garage and I don't have an electric heater in my garage or a gas powered heater like the one we see here. And so I actually just roll down the windows on my car and set the heat to high. And most EVs come with such a powerful heater. It's usually about 5 kilowatts, that's enough to heat. My garage is 20 feet by 20 feet by 10 feet. And so it's a 2-car garage. And I could get that thing up to like 5 degrees Celsius, even if it's minus 20 out, by running my car for a couple of hours in it. And it's pretty awesome having a mobile heating system. And we're all familiar with how cold it's been lately of this image. So the exhaust that comes out of a vehicle today, if it's really cold out, it's not warm enough to just rise into the atmosphere. It just kind of hovers around. And so if you're in bumper to bumper traffic and there's a diesel truck in front of you, you start to smell the fumes of the diesel truck. And that's carcinogens getting into your cabin. That's really harmful pollution getting into your cabin and like slowly poisoning you over the period of your life. So the World Health Organization estimates that we all, especially folks that live in urban environments, experience some lessening of our overall longevity due to this local air pollution problem from vehicle exhaust. So I no longer have that guilt. I no longer carry that guilt with me. And I really dream about the future 10, 20 years from now, where, 80, 50% of the vehicles are on the road are electric, and we're no longer in this like smog in the wintertime of pollution. Just wanted to touch really quickly. I see that we have time, so I populated some extra topics in here. I always get questions about battery longevity. So in addition to the warranty, which is 200,000 kilometers or 8 years, whichever transpires first, electric vehicle batteries of today are rated for 500,000 kilometers and higher. And we really can't look at our iPhone battery longevity and compare that to an electric vehicle battery. It's like comparing the gasoline engine in a lawnmower to a Honda VTEC engine or an inline V6 engine. They are made with completely different engineering tolerances, more uniform manufacturing, better materials. So we are seeing quite literally dozens of articles come out of people hitting high mileages on their electric vehicles without the need for a battery replacement. So I know of several people just in my own inner circle that have hit 200,000 kilometers in their vehicles, and they haven't had to do a battery replacement. They still have more than 90% of their battery capacity left. So what we say at the EVAA now is that effectively the battery will outlive the body in a lot of these vehicles, which is fantastic. We always get questions too about greenhouse gases. Yes, our electrical grid is predominantly fossil fuels. I actually needed to update this slide, but I didn't get around to it. Today, I was looking at it, and about 60% of our power was coming from natural gas, but the rest was coming from, so 60% natural gas, it was 15% coal, and the rest was renewables. It was solar, wind, and hydro, which is awesome and something you wouldn't have seen even 5 years ago. So Alberta's grid is continuously getting greener. And while we are producing electricity with natural gas, it was a lot cleaner than coal. And so what we're seeing is that driving an electric vehicle on Alberta's grid today uses about 30% the greenhouse gases of its gas-powered counterpart. So a 70% reduction in greenhouse gases is what we're seeing. We have a tool about this. So if you actually click on thegrid.albertaev.ca, It's the live tool that connects to the Alberta Electric System Operators Oracle for the current supply generation mix. And it will tell you how green it is to drive any electric vehicle. And then you can compare that to the vehicle you drive now. So it's pretty cool. I think we can skip over that. And I see we just hit 12:40. So I think we can switch to questions now, if that works.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, William, for the insight that you've given into what it's like to own an electric vehicle and a lot of the things to consider when you're starting to think about purchasing one. I've learned a lot through this and I'm excited to keep learning. And throughout your presentation, we've had a lot of incredible questions coming into the Q&A function and a couple in the chat as well.
Okay.
And I've also just want to mention, I've loved seeing the engagement. It looks like there's some folks who own an EV and they've been answering some questions too. So I encourage anyone who fits into that box to share your stories in the chat as well, because that's really great to see. So I just want to give everyone the heads up that we might go over time just because of all the questions I'm seeing. We'll try to stick to one, but just want to give that heads up. So letting everyone know that this is being recorded and we'll upload this recording to our social media channels after, if you do need to head out. You can follow up on the questions that get asked and the answers to afterwards. And so before we do that too, I just want to quickly mention that tomorrow there's going to be a post-event survey that's sent out. And this is going to just be asking some questions about what you learned and your experience with the webinar. And I'd encourage everyone to fill that out. As a thanks for doing that, everyone who fills that out will be entered in a draw to win a prize pack, which is an EV, or sorry, not an EV, I'm trying to remember what it is, energy efficiency home kit valued at $500, which you would need to pick up in Canmore. So if just a heads up that that'll be coming in case you do need to leave early. Okay, so with all that said, let's jump into some questions. There's a lot, so I guess the first one that came in right away is from Mary, and she asked, in order not to fill the landfill with non-electric cars, can we convert our current functional gas cars? And there was a question later on that asked about hybrids and what your thoughts were on those and if they're a good option too.
Okay. So conversions are possible, but you're going to miss out on a lot of the advantages, specifically that safety advantage of the skateboard deck design. Now, I don't think that conversions are the way that people are going to go just because bodies rust out, people tend to buy new, and just the amount of conversion shops that would need to open up for humanity to electrify transportation on a mass scale just doesn't make sense. It's not the most efficient way to do things. As bad as it sounds, the vehicles are just better off in the landfill. So it's going to be there. People will always be converting their precious DeLorean or, you know, Ford Model T or whatever type of vehicle they hold sentimental value to. So those conversion shops will always exist, but no one's going to convert their like 3-year-old Mazda or like 7-year-old Mazda MD3. It's just not going to happen. So plug-in hybrids, we like them. We call them the gateway drug to a pure electric vehicle, but they're increasingly becoming not necessary. And although you do get the advantages of range, you can use a gas station, you get all the disadvantages like maintenance for a gas engine. So you still need oil, you still need oil changes, you still have belts and spark plugs and all that stuff. So I've met lots of plug-in hybrid electric vehicle owners that have gone thousands of kilometers between fill-ups. I met a guy that he has an Audi A3 and he has driven 10,000 kilometers before his first fill-up. So I asked him, why did you need the gas tank in the first place? And he actually kind of admitted that it was silly to buy a plug-in hybrid at that point. So I think they're a good in-between technology, but you're seeing lots of OEMs just leapfrog over the plug-in hybrid because it's not really necessary and it's not what people want. So
Thank you. And there was a good comment from Shannon in the chat as you were talking, saying that there's a big recycling industry for the parts of an electric vehicle, and sorry, any vehicle, that iron is recycled, batteries, etc. And so she put a link in there if anyone wants to check that out.
Yeah, so lithium prices in 2021 were $14,000 per ton. Today, it's, I think, north of $30,000 a ton. So it is actually cheaper to recycle a electric vehicle battery than it is to mine new cobalt and new lithium and new nickel. So battery recycling is definitely going to take off. The reason why it's not there right now is because critical mass. There's not enough electric vehicles that are retiring for the industry to take off, but it's starting. Like all these pieces are fitting together. It's just going to take decades. So yeah, some electric vehicle batteries might end up in a landfill now, but longitudinally, I can't see that being the case. The raw material cost is just going too high.
Right. Thank you. There's a couple questions in here about the wheels. One of them is about winter tires and if those are readily available for electric vehicles, and another is about Teslas and if they're rear wheel drive and if there's any issues with traction in the winter. Yeah,
so winter tires availability is high. They use standard wheel sizes that are readily available. Actually, tire manufacturers are starting to integrate foam into the lining to decrease road noise. And the rear wheel drive, it's not as great as all wheel drive, but winter tire makes the biggest difference for winter driving. I would say that electric vehicle traction control systems are among the best, if not the best in the industry, because think about what you want in a traction control system. You want precision and responsiveness, and nothing gives precision like an electric motor. There's, robotics, they're all electric motors because they have fine precision. And responsiveness, I mean, we're talking electricity, it's speed of light. So yeah, the traction control systems are amazing.
Good to know. There's also a lot of questions from different angles about charging and how that works. One question is, you were talking about how you don't have to pay to charge at some places. Who pays then is one of the questions.
I mean, it's the host. So who's the host of the charger? It could be like in the case of IKEA, it's a retail business that sees it as a value add to their business, and they're using it to lure customers in. So we actually see this a lot where you'll see like IKEA install a free charger, and then the like furniture store down the road is like, damn, that's going to lure some people in. So they install a free charger. So you just have all these businesses vying for your attention. It's no different than like a hotel that offers, free access to the fitness room. Who pays for it? Everyone. So it's all the users of that business. Government is installing some free charging stations. So I guess you're saying the taxpayer is paying for that. Yeah, there's a lot of different models out there, but it's usually the site host. So figure out who the site host is, and that's who pays for it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And Bob is asking if there's an app that shows whether a charging station draws from fossil fuels or a renewable energy source, or maybe how you might be able to tell, and if there's a way to tell right now.
Like Bob, I would say that if you're in Canada, 82% of Canada's electricity comes from non-emitting resources. So in terms of electrical energy, Canada is an amazing source of green energy. So let that dictate some of your guilt there, but there isn't an app that tells you what charging station is off of fossil fuels and which isn't. I will say that like Alberta's power is predominantly fossil fuels, but the trick there is that we have this retail power pool that's set up, and you don't know unless you ask the host if they have a renewable energy contract with their retail energy provider. So they could be connected to Alberta's bulk electric system, which is off of fossil fuels, but they could have secured retail energy contracts for 100% renewable energy, and you wouldn't know. So sometimes charging station hosts put stickers on them that say that, but it's not always there. So it's tough to know. It would be a challenge. It's not in an app though, for sure. PlugShare has a lot of information, but it doesn't have that.
Awesome. Thank you. There's quite a few other charging questions. Someone's asked, is it possible to own an EV without installing a level 2 charger and just using a level 1 or existing plugs? We're in an apartment, so wouldn't be able to install a level 2 charger.
Okay, who's asking that? 'Cause I have a
It's an
follow-up question.
anonymous
Okay.
attendee. It was asked earlier.
All right. Okay. So February 9th, we'll get deeper into this topic, but EVAA does not endorse level 1 charging. So that's off 120 amp, 120 volt outlet, because in an unheated garage and a cold winter snap like the one we just had, like -40, it's insufficient to heat the battery and add energy to it. So all the energy from the port is just spent warming the battery. There's nothing left over to add energy to it because you can't charge a cold battery. If you have a heated garage, you can get by. If you're in an apartment building, as long as it has an underground heated parkade, you'll be fine off 120. You'll get a charge rate of like 5 to 8 kilometers per hour. So 5 to 8 kilometers of range per hour of charge. So you're looking at like 20-hour recharge timeframes, but you should be fine, especially for a commuter, like no question. It's just if you're in that unheated situation, it's not going to work for like 3% of the year where we have those really bad cold snaps. And in the EVAA's position or opinion, if it doesn't work 100% of the time, then we can't endorse it. So.
And so I guess that connects to another question from Shannon. How does thermal preconditioning work if you don't have a garage? Can this also occur outdoors if your vehicle is usually parked outdoors?
Yeah, you can, as long as you're connected to a charging station, you can thermally precondition off the grid. You can thermally precondition before you head out every day if you're not connected to the grid. It's just preheating your car basically. I would say that it's the most ideal scenario is being connected to a level 2 charger in your garage. There are some places that have curbside level 2 chargers, so look out for that. Yeah.
And one final one about charging at the home. What recommendations would you have for folks who live in condos, for instance, when the condo corporation won't pay for the upgrading cost, if it's not a common cost? How can people approach that?
Get on the board. Get on the board and kick those people out because they're going to need it. And that funding that I just announced, that's being made available to multi-unit residential buildings. So, tell your condo board that I am a part owner in this facility and I want this. And they have to, I don't know how litigious you can get, but I'm pretty sure there are avenues for you to argue for your rights in this case because you are part owner of the building.
Right, good to know. And I don't know if you'll know this answer, but in case you do, Claude asks, is there an expected timeline for having a level 3 charger in Morley, Banff, Lake Louise area?
Hey, Claude, I remember a conversation from a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. Check PlugShare. You'll see the orange wrenches, and that should indicate. But the company I work for, we have no plans in that area, and I can't say.
Okay. Another few questions have come in around the affordability aspect of electric vehicles. Lee has asked, would you forecast EV prices in Canada to increase or decrease in the next couple of years? And Debbie has asked what other suggestions you might have in terms of finding something that's affordable electric vehicle wise.
Right. So the used market is going to get pretty good here in a couple of years with how many have been sold in Canada, especially. So dealerships like Go Electric are electric only dealerships, and they bring in cars from all over Canada and even some in the United States. So affordability is good there. And I don't think an electric vehicle has depreciated as much as a gas vehicle. So you might look at an EV with like 200,000 kilometers and be like, oh geez, really that's not that bad. And I would only really be concerned about the suspension components like the shocks and tie rods and all that stuff. But once you get an okay on those, it's a good purchase. The So battery costs have been dropping since 2010 at a very sharp rate. And we're predicting by 2025, you're going to see cost parity between the average, average sedan, average small or medium-sized SUV. So the gas electric cost difference will be zero. We're not the only ones predicting that. That's pretty common in the industry. The reason being for that is that they're just achieving economies of scale. So an electric vehicle is actually easier to manufacture than a gas vehicle because it has less components. So as long as battery prices continue to fall, I know I said earlier that raw material has come up, but those prices should stabilize. It's a bit of a supply crunch right now, but there's amazing sources of battery materials coming online in the next couple of years. So I do think that price differential will come down. Yeah.
Great. And on the topic of batteries, there's been a few questions around that. Frank asks, does a level 2 or level 3 charger affect the life of the battery? And then there's some other questions around, will the battery charger turn off when it's done? What are the range reductions for that battery when it's -20? Yeah.
Yeah, you can charge to, so for daily driving, we always charge to 90%. If you're going on a road trip, you can charge to 100%, but it does help the longevity of your battery if you don't charge it to 100%. So every vehicle, every battery electric vehicle comes with a setting that you can set for the maximum charge, state of charge. So the charger will shut off. The EV will tell the charger to shut off, and it will no longer be delivering energy to the battery. Fast charging is, okay, put it this way. There are taxi fleets in Kelowna and California that operate purely on fast chargers, and they've seen negligibly more degradation than the rest of the fleet. So it might accelerate the degradation of your battery by like 1% over every 100,000 kilometers or something like that. But it's not something you need to be concerned about.
Okay, good to know. And jumping to the availability of electric vehicles in Alberta, are there long wait lists right now to get an electric vehicle? What does that look like, the process?
Yeah, reach out to a dealership and just ask them what the wait time is. I know that Hyundai is around like 3 to 6 months. It sounds like Ford is closer to 8 months. Tesla is a couple weeks. The supply chain disruptions caused by COVID are exacerbating that a little bit. So I don't know if it's like the chip side or the EV side, but it's like, if you're looking a year out, you're good.
So it's good to plan ahead for this kind of things. Okay,
absolutely.
and Stephen asks, how many choices for EVs are available as basic transportation rather than high-end luxury vehicles?
Yeah, it's commonly in the high-end luxury vehicle segment because they can throw in some profit margin there. That tends to be how things go with new technologies where the cost of manufacturing is high. So the longer you wait, the more affordable they get. It's just going to be the reality of it. The availability of like lower cost EVs, it's not great. Like the Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus is a good offering. The Chevy Bolt, the Nissan Leaf. I know that Chevy is coming out with a SUV that will be actually very, very affordable, like surprisingly affordable in the coming years. So it's just going to be waiting game. The used vehicle thing, like I said before, that'll help with affordability, but it is a problem right now, but it's a short-term problem.
Awesome. A few questions have come in too around the environmental side of electric vehicles, which I know you touched on. I'll read a couple of these points that come up, and I'm wondering if you can talk about them. One is about using electric vehicles and how that comes with its own cost environmentally, and how much time your vehicle spends parked versus used, and whether you end up using electric vehicles more, and if that changes the environmental impact. Someone else mentioned whether EVs change the emission situation for travel, but continue the environmental cost of producing Other vehicles, if whoever asked that, if you want to reword that, I'm not totally sure. But I think just around, you're using electricity to travel. Are you traveling more? And then Hal asks, do you know about the embedded carbon cost of electric vehicles? So what's the carbon cost to manufacture? He wants to know because this would want to be factored in if they were going to get rid of their gasoline vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah, the life cycle GHG costs. Well, I know that so we have to back up. Globally, there is a massive push for ESG, and that stands for environmental, social, and governance. All manufacturers of EVs are reaching down into their supply chain and pushing good GHG and environmental and social governance on their suppliers. So I have been following the lithium industry for a while, and the top thing that CEOs talk about right after the cost of lithium is how much their off-takers are talking about the GHGs per ton of lithium. So this is definitely going to improve. I think longitudinally, you're going to see lithium and other battery materials come from sources that are better for the environment. Like there's something called direct lithium extraction, which the majority of the world's lithium is in brine, which is like liquid. And lithium's a salt, right? So it's just dissolved in water. And the GHG practices are like looking really good for that. So actually, Alberta has the 7th largest known reserve of lithium in the world in the Leduc Reservoir. And they're looking at some of the best GHG optics in the entire industry if they come onto production, which they should by like mid 2020s. So it's looking really good there. And then it's just, the EV rolls off the lot with maybe a higher GHG footprint now, but in the future that'll get lower. The gas vehicle comes with its own GHG footprint, right? It's unavoidable. Everything we do has a GHG footprint. And then it's just a matter of how green your grid is. So Alberta has, if you read the news, there's no shortage of solar and wind projects coming online, far more than they expected. I think they were planning for 30% of our electricity coming from renewables by 2030. It's looking like it could be closer to 40%, if not higher. So our grid is becoming even more renewable every day. So they start off at the same, let's say in the future, same GHG footprint off the lot, and then it's just a matter of how much you drive it. So yeah, it's hard to say with everyone's different behaviors, and maybe you do drive more because you drive a more sustainable vehicle, but I don't think that's ever going to overtake the gas vehicle. Like today, there is a 70% reduction in driving an electric vehicle on Alberta's grid. And that's just with today's penetration of renewables. If you drive in BC, the majority of their electricity comes from hydro. So it's a non-emitting resource. Yeah, I know there's concrete that comes with the dams and all that stuff, but you have to decouple the emissions of the vehicle from their sources, because there's two separate problems. Like I read this quote from our Twitter account a couple days ago. No one eats a hamburger but calls it a veggie burger because the cow ate grass. But that's what we do all the time with electric vehicles. We call them, if we call them a zero emissions vehicle, we get demonized by folks that say, well, the vehicle was made with fossil fuels and the electricity comes from fossil fuels. You have to decouple those arguments. Those are separate problems. Those are separate industries. Yeah, it is part of the consideration, but those are getting tackled individually. So.
Right. And so important to look at the big picture, but to look at specific issues too.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole world is pushing for decarbonization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, the goal by the end, right? So
Yeah.
fingers crossed. One final question, and if anyone has anything pressing that we haven't gotten to that they put in the chat, please put it in the Q&A function, just because the chat sometimes is hard to follow with lots of things being put in there, but is about car shares. And so there have been a couple of points on this. And the big question is, how can car shares or common use cars transition to electric vehicles? So it's one person has experienced that it's tricky to ensure that there's adequate charging time, trickier to reduce when there's reduced range in the winter. And someone talks about the Yellowknife car share cooperative uses a 2016 Spark, and they're a member. And so anyway, we're wanting to get your view on EVs and car shares and the role that that plays.
Well, in the near term, maybe because of the literacy of folks, like the fact that I have to do this presentation means that literacy isn't high. So in the near term, I could see electrification of car sharing being problematic. Car rentals, private car share, even taxi companies, I could see it being difficult. It's just, it's hard to educate the masses on what this is. And it's so different from the status quo that it's going to take a long time. That's why the EVAA was created. So maybe in the short term, a plug-in hybrid is a better option for them, but longitudinally, all those vehicles will go electric. Like there's no doubt in my mind. And when you look at how much car share, so I've talked to one of Alberta's largest car share companies, and their average vehicle put on, I think it was 15,000 kilometers per month. Now, if all that was electric, imagine the GHG reductions, imagine the cost savings. I mean, we're talking $7 a fill for my car, as opposed to like a $60 tank. So you take your fuel bill and you divide it by 10. Imagine that as a service for folks that just drive around Edmonton in a car share capacity. And all you would need is, like, your drop-off zones need to have a curbside charger. It's not outside the realm of possibilities. It will happen.
Yeah, and there have been some links put in the chat too about the Yellowknife car share, and there's an Invermere car share too. So I'd recommend people check that out, because yeah, definitely an interesting thing to think about. And a final question just came in with a bunch of question marks, so we'll get to that and then we'll wrap up. Is about insurance, and if there's different costs for insurance with different electric vehicles.
So insurance companies have been saying that because the probability of injury is so low on a lot of the electric vehicles that they're seeing, they're lowering rates for those because the occupants just don't get hurt. So there's no large settlements to pay, and then or medical bills to pay. I know that TD Melashmonics gives a $8 per month discount for a green vehicle in recognition of all the problems that climate change is going to cause for the insurance industry, right? Extreme weather events, all those sorts of things. Imagine how many payouts were made to the Fort McMurray fire victims, right? And BC wildfires. So like these types of events, extreme weather events, are more likely to happen under climate change. So insurance companies figure if they offer a discount up front, it might help mitigate the problems on the back end. But yeah, it's not more expensive. I haven't seen anybody complain on the EVAA forums about a outrageous insurance quote. So it doesn't appear to be an issue. In fact, you get a discount in a lot of cases.
Wow, that's great to know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, fantastic questions. Oh my goodness. I have been considering things that I hadn't even thought about. And thank you to everyone. I've noticed quite a few people, as I mentioned in the chat, who own EVs sharing their experience too. So again, thank you for that.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up now, and I appreciate those of you who have stayed a little bit longer. We've gone a couple minutes over, but I hope it was worth it to answer some of these extra questions. Overall, hope this webinar has been a useful opportunity to explore this really big topic of electric vehicles, and hopefully maybe now an electric vehicle purchase might seem even just that much closer to in reach than it did before. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you so much to our guest speaker, William York, for sharing his knowledge with us. We hope to see everyone at future events coming up. And have a great afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.